The nurse accidentally gave me her hormone stash. I thought it was just a simple hospital visit, a routine checkup, nothing dangerous. But the moment that nurse handed me the wrong medicine, my life split into before and after. At first, I felt nothing. Then my body started changing in ways I couldn't explain, my emotions, my reflection, even the way people looked at me. And the worst part? She didn't look surprised. Like, this wasn't an accident at all. By the time I realized the truth about those hormones, it was already too late to go back. And what happened next destroyed everything I thought I knew about myself. I never believed that a single mistake could rewrite an entire life. Hospitals, to me, had always been places of routine, cold white walls, quiet footsteps, the faint smell of antiseptic floating through the air like a warning you eventually learned to ignore. You went in, you got treated, you walked out. Simple. Predictable. Safe. That morning, I expected nothing different. My name is Erin. I'm 26, a junior graphic designer at a small marketing firm, the kind of job where deadlines blur into late nights and coffee becomes more reliable than sleep. My life wasn't exciting, but it was stable. Structured. Normal. At least, normal on the outside. Because hidden beneath neatly folded shirts and sensible office shoes was a secret I had carried for years, one I never dared to speak out loud. Sometimes, when I was completely alone, I dressed in clothes that weren't meant for me. It had started innocently enough. Curiosity. A strange pull I couldn't explain when I was a teenager home alone, wandering past my cousin's forgotten suitcase during a family visit. Silk felt different than cotton. Softer. Warmer. Alive in a way that scared me and comforted me at the same time. I told myself it meant nothing. Years later, I was still telling myself the same lie. I wasn't brave enough to call it identity. Not honest enough to call it desire. So I called it stress relief and kept it hidden in the darkest corner of my closet and my mind. No one knew. Not my coworkers. Not my family. Not even Mia. Mia was everything steady in my chaotic world. We had been together for 3 years, long enough to build routines that felt like promises. Sunday movie nights. Grocery shopping arguments about cereal brands. The quiet comfort of falling asleep beside someone who thought they knew you completely. She loved the version of me I showed her, calm, dependable, safe. I loved her too much to risk breaking that illusion. Because I didn't know what she would see if the truth ever slipped out. Disgust? Confusion? Or worse, disappointment. So I buried it deeper. And life continued, balanced carefully on secrets that felt harmless because they were hidden. Until the day the hospital changed everything. I hadn't even wanted to go. It was just fatigue, weeks of exhaustion that sleep couldn't fix. Headaches that pulsed behind my eyes during long design sessions. Mia insisted I get checked. She always noticed the small things I tried to ignore. Just a routine blood test, she'd said, brushing my hair back with that gentle certainty I could never argue with. Then we'll celebrate when they tell you you're perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. If only she knew how fragile that word really was. The clinic was quiet when I arrived. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes every sound feel louder, the ticking clock, the shuffle of paperwork, the distant hum of machines behind closed doors. That's when I met her. The nurse. I don't remember noticing anything unusual at first. She looked ordinary, calm eyes, soft voice, movements practiced enough to feel automatic. The kind of person you trust without thinking, because hospitals train you to. Just a small vitamin support injection, she told me after glancing at my chart. You've been under a lot of stress. Her smile was reassuring. Professional. Easy to believe. So I didn't question it. Why would I? People trust white coats the way children trust lullabies. Automatically. Blindly. I rolled up my sleeve. Looked away from the needle. Waited for the tiny sting that meant everything was normal. For a moment, it was. Just pressure in my arm. Cool liquid under the skin. Nothing dramatic. Nothing cinematic. If my story had ended there, none of this would have happened. But stories like mine don't end in quiet rooms. They begin there. Walking out of the clinic, I felt lighter. Not physically. Something else. A strange calm humming beneath my skin, like silence right before a storm. I told myself it was relief, proof that Mia had been right, that I'd just needed rest, vitamins, reassurance. Normal explanations for normal feelings. I went back to work. Answered emails. Adjusted color palettes. Laughed at a joke I barely heard. But sometime around mid-afternoon, something shifted. It was subtle. Almost invisible. The kind of change you notice only because your body suddenly feels unfamiliar, like wearing someone else's clothes without realizing it. My heartbeat felt softer. My thoughts, quieter. Emotions closer to the surface, like glass ready to crack. I blamed exhaustion. I kept working. I kept pretending nothing was wrong. Because denial is easier than fear. That evening, Mia greeted me at the door with her usual warmth, arms wrapping around me before I could even drop my bag. She smelled like vanilla shampoo and home, comfort in human form. "You look pale," she murmured. "Are you sure the doctor said everything's okay?" I nodded too quickly. "Yeah. Just vitamins." The lie tasted small, but necessary. She smiled, satisfied, and pulled me toward the kitchen to show me the dinner she'd cooked. Normal life continuing, untouched by the invisible thread already beginning to unravel beneath it. I remember watching her move around the room, and feeling something unfamiliar twist inside my chest. Not just love. Something softer. Deeper. Almost longing. The emotion scared me enough that I looked away. Because for the first time, I felt like I was standing on the edge of something I couldn't name. And somewhere, far in the back of my mind, a quiet question whispered. What exactly did that nurse give me? I ignored it. Of course I did. Because the truth was already changing me. And I wasn't ready to see it yet. The first real change didn't happen in front of a mirror. It happened in silence. 3 days after the injection, I woke before my alarm, heart racing, breath shallow, the faint echo of a dream I couldn't fully remember. All I knew was the feeling it left behind, soft, emotional, overwhelming in a way that didn't feel like me. I lay there staring at the ceiling while early morning light spilled through the curtains beside Mia's sleeping figure. Normally, mornings felt heavy, slow, practical. But this one felt delicate. Like my senses had been turned up too high. The fabric of the bedsheet against my skin felt sharper. The quiet sound of Mia breathing felt louder. Even my own heartbeat sounded unfamiliar, faster, lighter, almost nervous. I told myself it was stress. I told myself it would pass. But deep down, a quiet unease had already begun to grow. At work, concentration slipped through my fingers like water. Design files blurred together. Colors felt too emotional, like each shade carried meaning I couldn't ignore. A soft pink banner for a client's ad campaign made my chest tighten for no logical reason. A gentle melody playing in the office cafe nearly brought tears to my eyes. That had never happened before. I wasn't someone who cried easily. I wasn't someone ruled by feelings. Yet now emotions hovered just beneath the surface, waiting. Around noon, I locked myself in the restroom and stared at my reflection under harsh fluorescent light. Nothing looked different. Same jawline. Same tired eyes. Same ordinary face. But the feeling of looking at myself had changed. I couldn't explain it. It was like seeing a stranger wearing my features. I splashed cold water on my face and forced a quiet laugh. "Get it together, Erin," I whispered. The sound of my own voice felt strangely soft in the empty room. That scared me more than anything. The physical changes began slowly enough to deny. A strange warmth under my skin. Muscles feeling less tense, almost lighter. Sleep coming easier, but dreams becoming vivid, emotional, impossible to ignore. And then there was the mirror. I started avoiding it. Not because I saw something obvious, but because each glance carried a flicker of unfamiliarity I couldn't name. Like my body was quietly shifting in ways too small to measure, yet too real to ignore. One evening, Mia left early for a late shift at the bookstore, kissing my cheek before rushing out the door. "Don't stay up too late working," she called. The apartment fell silent behind her. And with that silence came temptation. It had been weeks since I'd opened the hidden box in the back of my closet. Weeks since I'd let myself feel the quiet thrill I pretended didn't matter. But tonight felt different. Restless. Emotional. Fragile. Before I could stop myself, I was kneeling on the floor, fingers trembling as I lifted the lid. Inside lay the secret version of me I never allowed into daylight. Soft fabric. Carefully folded. Untouched memories waiting to breathe again. My pulse quickened, not just with fear, but something deeper. Need. I hesitated only a moment before pulling the clothes free, the smooth material sliding across my hands like electricity. Every movement felt stronger than before, more meaningful, almost magnetic. As I changed, the world outside seemed to fade. There was only sensation. The gentle weight of fabric against my skin. The strange comfort spreading through my chest. The quiet, dangerous feeling of rightness I had spent years trying to ignore. But tonight, that feeling was impossible to push away. I stepped toward the mirror. And for the first time, I didn't just see a secret. I saw possibility. The thought hit me so suddenly it stole my breath. Why does this feel more natural now? A chill ran through me. Because somewhere deep inside, I already knew the answer pointed back to the hospital. Back to the nurse. Back to the injection I never questioned. The next morning, the changes were harder to deny. My face looked softer. Not dramatically. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I noticed. And once you notice something like that, you can never unsee it. Panic curled in my stomach as I grabbed my phone and searched symptoms, side effects, medication errors, anything that could explain what was happening. Nothing matched. Nothing made sense. Except one terrifying possibility I didn't want to name. Hormones. The word alone made my hands shake. "No," I whispered. "That's impossible. Hospitals don't make mistakes like that. Nurses don't hand out the wrong injections. Lives don't change because of one small moment. Right?" That night, Mia watched me carefully across the dinner table. "You've been different lately," she said gently. My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "I don't know," she admitted. "Just quieter. Softer somehow. Softer." The word echoed in my mind like a warning bell. I forced a smile. "Just tired." She studied me a moment longer, like she could almost see through the lie. Then she nodded. But the doubt in her eyes didn't disappear. And fear settled deeper into my bones. Because secrets are fragile things. And mine was starting to show cracks. Later, alone in the bathroom, I lifted my shirt with trembling hands and stared at my reflection again. The silence felt heavy. Final. Unavoidable. Because this time, I did see it. A change too real to dismiss. Too deliberate to be imagination. My breath caught in my throat. The hospital. The nurse. The injection. It all crashed together in one horrifying realization. This wasn't an accident. And whatever had been started inside my body was only just beginning. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the same thought repeated, sharp, cold, impossible to ignore. This wasn't an accident. By morning, fear had turned into something heavier than panic. It was certainty. And certainty demands answers. I called the clinic the moment it opened. My voice sounded strange in my own ears, tight, unsteady, softer than I remembered. I need to ask about the injection I received 3 days ago, I said, forcing the words out. A pause on the other end. Keyboard clicks. Routine silence. Sir, according to our records, the receptionist replied calmly, you only received a standard vitamin support dose. My stomach dropped. Because that answer felt too clean. Too simple. Too rehearsed. Are you sure? I whispered. Yes, sir. Everything is normal. Normal. The word felt like a lie wrapped in politeness. I hung up slowly, hands shaking. If the record said vitamins, then whatever was happening to me wasn't supposed to exist. For 2 days, I tried to pretend life could continue. Work. Dinner. Small talk with Mia. But pretending becomes impossible when reality keeps changing beneath your skin. My emotions deepened, waves of feeling that rose without warning. Music made my chest ache. Memories felt sharper. Even Mia's gentle touch sent unfamiliar warmth through my body, softer, more vulnerable than anything I'd known before. And physically. The mirror had stopped lying. Subtle shifts. Small, undeniable. Each one whispering the same truth. You are changing. On the 3rd night, everything collapsed. Mia found the box. I hadn't hidden it well enough. Or maybe fate had simply decided secrets were finished. I walked into the bedroom and saw her sitting on the floor, soft fabric in her hands, eyes wide with confusion that hadn't yet turned into judgment. Time stopped. My heart pounded so loudly I could barely hear her voice. Erin, she said quietly, what is this? There are moments in life where lies are still possible. This wasn't one of them. Because something inside me, fragile, terrified, exhausted, finally broke. I didn't choose this, I whispered. And for the first time, it was true in more ways than one. Tears blurred my vision before I realized I was crying. I think something's happening to me, I said. The hospital, the injection. I don't think it was vitamins. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Breathing. Alive. Mia's expression shifted from confusion to fear. We went back to the clinic together the next morning. This time, I wasn't leaving without the truth. The waiting room felt colder than before. The walls too white. The silence too careful. And then. Her. The nurse stepped into the hallway, and the moment her eyes met mine. She didn't look surprised. She looked calm. Like she had been expecting this. Ice ran through my veins. Mia squeezed my hand, sensing the tension, but she didn't understand why my pulse was racing like prey spotting a predator. We followed the nurse into a private room. The door clicked shut behind us. Too loud. Too final. I was wondering when you'd come back, she said softly. The words drained the air from my lungs. Mia stiffened beside me. What does that mean? The nurse's gaze stayed on me. Not guilty. Not nervous. Certain. And in that moment, I understood something terrifying. She knew exactly what she'd done. You weren't given vitamins, she said gently. The truth landed without sound, but it shattered everything. Mia's grip tightened painfully. My vision blurred at the edges. Why? I managed to whisper. The nurse studied my face like someone searching for confirmation of a long-held belief. Because, she said quietly, you've been living in conflict for years. My heart stopped. You think this was random, but it wasn't. Her voice remained calm. Almost kind. That night, when you talked in your sleep during observation, you told the truth you hide when you're awake. Cold terror spread through me. I gave you a chance, she continued. A door you were too afraid to open yourself. Mia stepped forward, anger breaking through shock. You experimented on him? The nurse didn't argue. Didn't apologize. Change had already begun inside him, she said softly. I only accelerated the truth. The room spun. Not just from fear, but from something deeper. Because beneath the horror, a quieter realization was forming. One I hated. One I couldn't deny. Part of me hadn't wanted the changes to stop. And that truth was more terrifying than anything she'd done. We can reverse it, Mia said quickly, voice shaking. Right? There's treatment? The nurse looked at me, only me. And the silence that followed felt endless. Reversal, she said gently, isn't always the same as healing. My breath caught. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about my body. It was about choice. Mia's eyes filled with desperate hope. We'll fix this, she whispered to me. Everything will go back to normal. Normal. The life I'd protected with lies. The self I'd hidden in darkness. The secret that had quietly grown, even before the hospital. Tears slid down my cheeks again, but this time, they felt different. Not just fear. Grief. For the person I used to be, and the truth I could no longer escape. The nurse reached into a drawer and placed a small medical vial on the table between us. Clear liquid. Simple. Final. One injection, she said softly. And the process begins to reverse. Hope flickered in Mia's face. But the nurse's eyes stayed on mine. Waiting. Because deep down, she knew this decision was never really about medicine. It was about who I was willing to become. My hand trembled as I reached toward the vial. Past. Future. Fear. Freedom. All balanced in one fragile moment. Mia whispered my name, voice breaking with love and terror. And inside my chest, two truths collided. The life I was supposed to live. And the person I might already be becoming. My fingers closed around the vial. The room held its breath. And just before I could decide, a sudden knock exploded against the door. Loud. Urgent. Wrong. All three of us froze. Because something in that sound carried a warning none of us understood yet. A voice shouted from the hallway. Security is on the way. Nobody leaves the room. The nurse's calm expression finally cracked. And in that instant, I realized something even more terrifying than the transformation itself. This story was bigger than just me. The words from the hallway didn't just echo. They collapsed the air inside the room. Security is on the way. Nobody leaves. For a moment, none of us moved. Not me. Not Mia. Not even the nurse who, until seconds ago, had seemed completely in control. Because whatever was happening now, was no longer quiet. No longer hidden. And definitely not normal. The MY fingers were still wrapped around the small glass vial. One injection to reverse everything. One decision to erase the changes already spreading through my body, through my emotions, through the fragile truth I had spent years denying. But suddenly, the choice didn't feel private anymore. Heavy footsteps thundered somewhere down the corridor. Voices. Radios. Urgency. Mia's grip tightened around my arm. Aaron, take it, she whispered, panic rising in her voice. Please. Before this gets worse. Before this gets worse. The words hit harder than she realized. Because part of me knew something she didn't. It was already too late to go back to the person I was. Across the room, the nurse's calm mask had finally slipped. Not fear exactly, but urgency. Her eyes locked onto mine, not like a criminal caught, but like someone watching a final test unfold. "You don't have much time," she said quietly. "Whatever you choose it for yourself. Not for fear. Not for anyone else." Mia turned toward her, anger breaking through tears. "Stop talking to him like this. You've done enough." But the nurse didn't answer. She was still watching me. Waiting. The footsteps outside grew louder. A sharp voice ordered someone to open another door. Metal clanged. Radios crackled. Each sound pounded against my ribs like a countdown. Inside my chest, two futures pulled in opposite directions. A return to the life everyone understood. The version of me that fit neatly into expectations, even if it meant burying something real forever. Or truth. Uncertain. Terrifying. A path with no guarantees, except honesty I had never been brave enough to face. My hand shook harder around the vial. Because for the first time in my life, no one else could decide for me. Mia's voice softened, breaking into something fragile. "Whatever this is, we'll fix it together," she said. "You and me. Like always. Like always." Routine. Comfort. The quiet future we had planned without ever questioning who I truly was. Tears blurred my vision again. Because loving her, and losing myself, suddenly felt like the same choice. The hallway went silent. Not calm, the kind of silence that comes right before something breaks. A shadow stopped outside the frosted glass door. Then, bang. A hard knock that made Mia gasp. "Open the door. Now." Authority. Final. Unavoidable. Time had run out. My heart slowed suddenly, not from peace, but from clarity. All the fear. All the hiding. All the years spent pretending I didn't feel what I felt. They led here. To one impossible moment. One truth I could no longer escape. No injection could decide who I really was. Only I could. I lifted the vial slightly. Mia watched, breath trembling with hope. The nurse watched, eyes filled with something deeper, not control, but understanding. The door handle began to turn. Metal clicking. Locks shifting. Seconds. That's all I had left to choose the rest of my life. And just before the door swung open, I made my decision. But you won't believe what I chose, or who was really behind the nurse's plan, or what Mia did the moment she understood the truth. Because everything changes in the next part. And nothing will ever be the same again.